What do they say about death and taxes? Well, of course, there's a lot more in between that sadly is guaranteed, including that we're all going to get older and at some point we're going to need somebody to help us through our daily lives. Australia's aged care system is one that has had many reviews, many inquiries, billions of dollars and too many promises to fix. There was even a Royal Commission a few years ago into how we could improve the system. We've even changed a government because, in part, remember the promise that this bloke made before the last election about how he'd fixed aged care?
24/7 nurses. 24/7 nurses. 24/7. 24/7 nurses. Nurses 24/7. 24/7 nurses. 24/7. Nurse in a nursing home 24/7. 24/7. Put the nurses back in the nursing homes 24/7.
But as we have told you multiple times, that's not happening. The promise was that it would happen by October. It's now November. It hasn't happened. Again, imagine Tony Abbott saying, I'm going to stop the boats, but he didn't stop the boats. Well, there would be an outcry because it's a fairly core promise. But as we've shown multiple times on multiple issues, the media have no interest in holding this government to account. But I'll park the failures of this government to one side and get back to the central issue, which is that all of us deserve the final years of our life to be ones of dignity. Now, obviously, our bodies will slowly but surely let us down, and maybe our mind will let us down before our bodies. But our heart and our soul will, of course, beat until the day that we pass. Our families want us to be comfortable, and you deserve to be comfortable after the long, productive, hard life that you live as a normal, everyday person. I mention all of this today because, guess what? The problem is just as bad today as it was before the last election, before the Aged Care Royal Commission, and before the tens of billions of dollars that have been spent, let alone people having to go all in financially to be taken care of in their final years. We learned today of yet another report that tells us how, yet again, tens of thousands of people are being let down in the final years of their life. Now, this is not an attack on the aged care workers. We all know the work that they do. But it absolutely is on the failures of government and many of the private companies who find ways to cut costs as opposed to taking care of the people who may well have invested every cent they ever had into how they'd be taken care of in the final years of their life. We learned today from the Older Persons Advocacy Network that they have received 36,900 reports of how the system is failing. Now, remember, this is just one organisation, and that's a football stadium of people who found it bad enough to complain. As the papers say today, it is a heartbreaking insight into how our most vulnerable are being treated. And as I've often talked about on this show, of all of the isms, like sexism and racism, there is such little attention to ageism. We know about the discrimination that older workers face, and when I mean older workers, I mean people in their 50s, about being able to have anywhere near the same career that they could 20 years earlier, as businesses either seek to pay people less or younger managers try to move the old guard on because perhaps they're not woke enough. But the ageism that is obvious is that this story should have been somewhere near the start of your 6 p.m. news tonight, but it was considered not interesting enough. There will be no one wearing special ribbons or a special day, or someone trying to fight ageism on Instagram, or dare I even say TikTok right now, because again, it's just apparently the way things go. But let's have a look at these 36, nearly 37,000 complaints about the aged care system in Australia. The complaints included being left sitting in soiled clothing for hours, people being denied timely medical care for festering wounds. In one case, an elderly person went without a shower for 4 weeks because the provider could not find 2 staff to assist. 4 weeks without a shower. More than half of the reports, and this is the interesting thing, more than half of the reports involve those with a home care package. So people's complaints are not about aged care facilities as such. It's almost 50-50 now about the care that they are getting in their home as well as the care in a facility. that clearly is failing. More than half of the reports involve those with their home care packages, including some paying for services they did not receive, while a third related to residential care homes. To make it nice and simple, look at this graph. You can see that the colours of red and orange, let's say, well, they represent the red, residential aged care, and home care represents the orange. Complaints are basically the same, that the failures that we used to say were only happening in an aged care facility are now happening at home as well. And for obvious reasons, all of us want to stay in our home for as long as possible, but there are huge failures that are clearly taking place about the type of care that people are getting in their home. Now, this care, as you know, is not cheap. It is not cheap if you have to pay for it yourself, and it is definitely not cheap to the taxpayer if you can't. But bring the graphic up again, because I want you to see, again, the areas of concern that people have. Now, the biggest area there is about the care delivery. The second part of the complaints are the financial ones, and there, home care gets more complaint than institutional care. Getting access to care is something that a lot of people are complaining about, again, about home care. When we talk about things like decisions or even abuse, there seems to be an obvious problem there in aged care facilities as opposed to what is happening at home. But have a look at that. In terms of complaints, it doesn't seem that there's much difference about being in a facility versus being at home. The 37,000 complaints included somebody who couldn't have a shower for 4 weeks, let alone all of the other things that we have sadly got too used to about all of this. Now, I'm not here pretending to have the solution, but I wanted you to see that I acknowledge the problem. And I know how difficult it has probably been for you when it came to your parents, or you when it was your kids and you had to have these discussions, when you had to make these decisions. Well, there's another bit of news that, again, should have been a lot more prominent today, and that is who pays and how much for aged care. Now, I understand if we're making a decision in 20 years from now, so people that are in their 40s and 50s might be able to change their financial arrangements. But there's a chance that this could change as soon as next year in the federal budget. And put simply, if you are a person who has been lucky enough to buy a house at the right time and seen the suburb lift in its value as you've taken care of the lawns, kept everything clean, renovated here and there, taken care of the garden, redone the carport or many of other things that have helped with the value of that house. It now seems that the value of your home is going to be a determination that the federal government is going to start to make decisions about how much you pay on your own versus how much help you get from the institution that you have paid tax to your entire life. Today, a report was released on the behalf of the Albanese government. Let me read as it was described in the Financial Review. The Albanese government has all but confirmed that those with greater means will pay more for their aged care, including through the use of tailored superannuation products, under changes to be incorporated in the next budget in May. Now, again, let me explain how this works. Now, again, for many people, when it comes to their aged care, you have to sell the house because that amount of money is what you need to put in as the ongoing fee to an aged care facility. For some people, they're able to take some of the money from their superannuation and put it into the home care situation. But essentially what they are now starting to talk about tinkering with here is a system where all of your money will end up being absorbed by the aged care system, and you'll have very little of it to hand on to the family members that you have always assumed would at one point in your life, the end of your life, be the beneficiaries of your hard work and your financial smarts during your life. Again, this continues. Financial products to assist with wealth will be one of the options. What does this mean? It means that, again, superannuation, access, how it gets doled out, and how much is in your fund is going to help determine whether you pay for it all or whether the government pays nothing. As part of its deliberations, the body that has given advice to the government, that seemingly the government is willing to accept according to the take from the Financial Review, as part of its deliberations on user pays, the task force has discussed lifting the $193,000 means test threshold on the family home, meaning the 193 threshold test, which is used to test for daily care that applies in aged care facilities, as a resident has $400,000 or $4 million, the expectation is that all of those will be pushed to a difficult place. Now, I don't know exactly what the number's going to be, so I apologise for the anxiety that many of you may be feeling watching this. And as soon as we know more information, we'll talk about it and we'll spread it out over the next few months. But keep an eye on this, because you worked your whole life with an expectation of how it will end and about the comfort in which you will have as it begins to end. You made decisions on expectations of what might happen in 20 or 30 years. And as you have got closer to the dates when those financial decisions are about to pay off, the federal government looks like it is going to yet again move the goalposts. Now, they may say that it'll result in more at-home care. Well, as we've shown you, almost 50% of all of the complaints about aged care are about the home care facilities. It may well be a scenario where the amount of money that you have to give over to the private company that runs the aged care facility will start to go through the roof. The ability for you not to lose everything that you put in your home or superannuation, again, all of this is now up for grabs. Yet amazingly today, we can't find the aged care minister saying anything about this. Instead, this was just one of those reports that moves from one side of the desk to the other side of the desk, and the interpretation of people who watch this more than I do and that are smarter than me on this issue say that the government is probably going to put it in place. The federal government is looking at a federal budget deficit next year, so they'll be trying to find ways to save money. In fact, federal budget deficits are expected to get worse every year for the next 40 years. And a big part of that is going to be aged care. Watch this space. I apologise for the concern. I will update you when I know more. And we'll maybe have a chat to that organisation again a bit later in the week.